right, I think we are live now, guys. Hopefully we got this correct. Again, we apologize, everybody. We're having some Facebook issues lately. They just don't want us to go live anymore. And for you guys that don't know what's going on, check that out. Google it. Facebook is having some things happening October 1st that are going to really kind of mess it up for everybody on Facebook. There is an ASCAP issue more than anything, guys. So, you know, when you think about that, look into that. So it's a little bit of ASCAP issues. There's a lot of issues going on. We're going to get us over to Facebook as well, guys. So if you're joining us from Facebook, welcome. It's going to be a great show. I'm really excited. We're going to have a couple guys coming on a little bit later, but really quick, I want to talk to Tim. We have some great news today, I believe, right? We start off the show.
We certainly got a lot of positive signs, farther than we've ever seen, at least here in Vermont, as far as establishing a taxed and regulated marketplace for cannabis. The bill, the very contentious, very long in the coming bill, made it out of conference committee this week, which means that the Senate and the House have agreed upon a compromised bill. That has come out, and that made it through the Rules Committee, which needs to approve it to come to a floor vote the same day, which was great to see. It's now scheduled for a vote on the Senate and the House on Thursday and Friday. The Senate's a sure thing. The House, it does look like we've maintained the votes for it, which means that it could be on Governor Scott's desk as early as next week.
Which is fantastic news, because, I mean, for a minute there, we were getting a little worried. It's
more than a little.
Yeah, see a lot of crazy things, which is great. I'm trying to get the show shared out to everything, guys. So if you guys want to plug in. I'm just trying to get our typical Facebook fans here. I'm really excited though. Michigan, man, we have Nick Young, right, coming in from Michigan.
Correct. Yeah.
Krystillion, right, which is a unique name, man. Tell us a little bit about it. I mean, you're on Michigan, so this is going to be a great show, because Michigan right now, from what I understand, is kind of going nuts, right? Dispensaries are opening up. Like, we got our chef Rodney. He's out there. He's going to be joining us here shortly. It's going to be it's a great scene right now, isn't it?
It is. It's a really interesting time, and before it comes barreling through, there's a train that's about to go right outside my office. So bear with me here in just a second. Of course, right when we get started, something's got to happen, right? Train wreck.
I was gonna say, give it about 40 minutes. One's about to go by my house too.
Oh, there you go. So no, it's actually not too bad. So yeah, Michigan back in 2018 voted to legalize a taxable adult use market, and really it took the state a year to really start getting everything together. And there's just a lot of compliance, a lot of paperwork, a lot of applications, right, and just trying to figure out what that looks like. So it took about a year to get everything implemented, and by the end of 2019 was the first adult use recreational cannabis sale, and since then it's been going pretty crazy. And the state did just announce that they're going to roll forward a policy that's going to let solely rec applications come in. Previously in the state of Michigan, you have to have a medical license, and then you can apply for a rec license with some red tape. But now they're going to start opening up for all rec. And I think from there, there's a lot of activity in the space, a lot of movement, and it's been great so far.
So Krystillion, right? Where does Krystillion stand in the grand scheme of things in Michigan right now?
Good question. So Krystillion's is a company that really focuses right now in the hemp space. We have a couple of other things going on that might stray us otherwise, but we're not quite there yet. Close. So, but on the hemp side, what we do is we do processing. So we do the extraction. Well, we do refinement. So we create distillate that goes into final products, whatever that might be. So we have an ingredient portion of it. We create isolate, and that's really where Krystillion got its name from. It's a play off of the Greek word crystalline, which is kind of like a pure, crystal clear type of version of something. And so that's kind of what we wanted to bring to the table. Was we have the team consists of a chemical engineer who is really the talent that's able to kind of make the ship run from a chemistry level. And then we have a bunch of business consultants from technology and marketing that have done graphic design, all of those different sides of it. And so our goal was to take something that has a fairly undefined supply chain in cannabis and bring understandable, crystal clear processes that make people feel comfortable working with us. And so the result of that's been I don't know if, I believe by volume, if we're not the largest hemp distillery in the Midwest, we're very, very close. And being able to do that scale and size and the quality that we've been able to do, there just hasn't been a lot of extraction or processing talent in the marijuana side. And so we've been able to start looking at the marijuana side as well and doing some planning. So that's kind of where we're at on the processing side. And then to move some of that oil in the hemp space, we have a topical product line that we've created that we sell ourselves, but for the majority of what we do is white label or private label, where someone comes to us with a formula. We use our distillate or isolate to create or help those customers help their end users hit whatever outcome that might be. So we dabble in a lot of the kind of boutique cannabinoids and custom formulation and things like that.
Nice. So what's your favorite product to play with?
So currently I've been having a lot of fun with THC Delta 8. That's been a really good one. We have our own brand. Actually, you have one here. So we have our Savvy brand. So I think just how it's created, the circumstance that it's in, I just think the name Savvy kind of goes too well not to try to push that. So I thoroughly enjoy it. I like D8. It's a great daytime thing for me.
Well, I mean, I was checking you guys out, obviously, and I saw the Delta 8 carts, right? Which is something that is kind of like, I mean, I don't know how it is out west yet. On the East Coast, it's kind of a new thing, right? So there's a lot of people asking, us what it is, where they can find it, how they can get their hands on it. And then, with the DEA and the FDA and all these other things going on, it's been kind of a hot button topic, right? How do you feel about the sale of Delta 8? What do you see it in your opinion right now?
So we've obviously spoken with a lot of different groups, a lot of different attorneys as we kind of gone through this and gotten some advisement on it. And so really what the DEA kind of came out and said from our perspective was that they're putting a plan in place for just making their stance known. And so that doesn't just impact Delta 8. It doesn't say anything different that the USDA laws, it's just restating it. But the thing that got the hemp community all fired up was on work in progress material. So for example, I take a compliant hemp flower that's at 0.3% THC. That's a legal dry weight product, right? But then I go and make my crude oil or my distillate and I'm concentrating it. And by definition, I'm concentrating everything else in it. So that's saying everyone that's in the processing space is doing illegal activities in order to make the lotion that helps someone with pain. It's just, so that's what had people up in arms. There's a lot of different definitions and things of how D8 is derived and the definition around synthetic, but we start with a hemp derived compound in order to make it. So from that perspective, there's a lot of things that have not been well defined, but the DEA did come back out about a week later after everyone was up in arms and did say that, hey, like, this is hemp. Like, we're worried about drug cartels. We're worried about heroin. Like, we're not worried about the big bad hemp industry. Like, if you look at what the hemp industry is, the compounds it does and the outcomes it provides its customers, like, this should be the absolute least concern for the DEA. Right.
Now, how do you process it though? Like, that's the other big question everybody asks with D8 is, obviously we know Delta 9, it has our THC in it. So that's where the Delta 9 issue comes in, right? But now Delta 8 is this new thing. Like you said, there's a lot of confusion about it. How do you guys get your Delta 8 and literally what is the kind of the differences between the two?
Sure. So I'll start with the first part of the question, which is where does it come from? So it can be derived a couple of different ways. It is naturally found in hemp. So it can be isolated via chromatography, as is other minor cannabinoids, CBG, CBC, CBDV, etc. So that is one way of doing it. That's an expensive way of doing it. There's another way where you start with something pure, like we start with CBD isolate, and then we're able to introduce some catalyst with our chemical engineer, and then remove that catalyst. And what happens is it changes the pH essentially of the product, and that changes the cannabinoids. So it's not just Delta 8 that matters with. There's a whole host of minor cannabinoids that can be derived from using innovation with chemistry and science. And there's a lot of different compounds that are out there that's not just Delta 8 that are providing really good outcomes for other people. Things like CBN or CBC is been seeing a lot of research with cancer with CBC and CBN. If you ever had a tincture or a vape pen with CBN in it, that'll put you to sleep.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because what's nice about this is everybody talks about CBD, right? Like the whole industry is all about CBD. So, for me, when we talk about it, like you just hit the nail on the head. There's so many other valuable components to, cannabis, right? CBG, CBNs. Now, what are some of these effects? Are these things that you guys are playing with as well, where you're isolating them and using them in carts?
Not necessarily cartridges. Cartridges is just something that we did with a batch of the D8 that came back. We got it tested. It came back compliant. That's a difficult thing to do. And so we took that batch and we said, okay, we're gonna run cartridges with this batch. And because of our distillery and the scale that it's at, our batches are pretty big. So that makes a lot of cartridges, right? And so, but a lot of the different cannabinoids, we're just starting to scratch the surface, and I mean us as in not only us as a company, but us as an industry. I always get a little bit off put when someone talks about how big of an expert they are in this space. It's like, we're just getting started. We don't know what we don't know yet. And what we know so far is we've identified over 100 different cannabinoid compounds, but we don't know what each one of them do. But I do know that, you start locking in on some of them. So personal experience, THC Delta 8, whether it's a tincture or an edible or a vape, for me, it is a good kind of clear daytime high where I don't feel down. I don't get that sleepiness to it. I don't get the munchies from it. It's just a nice, I call it a mood booster is my best way to kind of explain it. And the thing that I kind of like about it, I don't know about you guys, but I work all the time. It doesn't last super long. It's at least on like the vape side, you can take a couple of puffs and you feel really good, nice boosted mood for a good period of time. But you really, you feel it for 20 to 30 minutes, and then you kind of get the longer lasting effects that kind of last afterward.
Mm-hmm. We talk about the entourage effect, right? We're talking about specific cannabinoids now. Give me your understanding of the entourage effect and how it's working for people, so people understand. Because we're talking about isolates a lot, then we're talking about broad spectrums. We talk about full spectrums. Now, do you guys process anything that's a full spectrum oil?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's mostly what we do is we manufacture, and so some of it even gets into what someone defines as full spectrum. There's actually kind of conflicting definitions. So we make full spectrum distillate, which there's going to be a group out there that goes, that's not it. That's not considered that, because when you distill something, you remove the terpenes, and some people consider full spectrum, including the whatever the terpenes are from the material. So, so yes, we do full spectrum distillation and processing, where we are grabbing all of the cannabinoids out of the plant material. And it just depends on the farmers that we're working with, right? And a lot of it all starts with the farmer. It all starts with genetics on what they're growing and how they did. And then that kind of dictates of what we can do with it.
Mm-hmm. which is great. There's a lot of really cool things you guys have going on with that right now, especially people. I mean, that's our biggest problem. People look at broad spectrum, look at full spectrum. I see distillates, we see all these things that just don't make sense, right? It's a lot of confusion going on out there, and it's hard for people to make the I do the same thing actually. I see full spectrum stuff on stuff that's been distilled or processed, and you're like, you know what I mean? And if you talk to some really good, really like plant loving people, like they want you to include everything even more than the bud, right? They want root stuff because there's different cannabinoids in the roots and then also in the stems itself, correct?
So we actually got pulled into a project on the stems to see what cannabinoid content was there, and we determined there wasn't a substantial enough cannabinoid content to make it worth processing. There's a little bit that's in there, but some of it comes down to testing as well. I mean, as everyone's getting started and discovering these new cannabinoids, like how can the testing keep up when we're just figuring out stuff now? And so there might be stuff in there that we just don't even know yet. I have seen, I think it's kind of cool that I've seen some of the hemp farmers that I work with, they sell, because some of those stems specifically on hemp plants, I mean, they're stalks, like they're nice chunky stems on them. They're great dog toys.
Yeah. Right. Well, let's talk about that too, right? I mean, I don't know how much you know about the effect on animals, but for a while there, and I mean, I've even gone through this personally, right? Where literally, I had a dog get really sick and we brought him to the vet, and the vet was like, "Oh, it's marijuana," and I'm like, "No, huh?" And really at the time we didn't have any cannabis around the dog, right? So it was really interesting to hear that, because now we see a lot of dog treats and a lot of these CBD things for animals. Is it safe? Is it really that safe for animals, or is there a really big gray area concerning that as well?
So I've actually had the opportunity to speak with veterinarians on this, and there seems to be, so whether it's a person or a dog, everyone's got this endocannabinoid system, right? And there's different things that help nourish that. And so we've gotten, like, the amount of feedback that we get from pet owners is it's unbelievable with the types of outcomes that we see. But we have had the opportunity to sit down with a veterinarian. Hey, what's too much? What happens if they get too much? What are the consequences? What are the trade-offs? Because at some point you have a 15 or a 16-year-old dog that's riddled with arthritis. Like, if you might have to take your trade-offs. And so there's just not a ton of long-term use studies that are out there. I have started to see a little bit more of a pitch towards isolate, but again, it's just everything's so new that for every argument one way, you're going to get 3 or 4 people saying, no, you're wrong, it's this way. And the fact of the matter is we just don't know what we don't know yet.
Mm-hmm. That's a great answer. I mean, we've had people on the show before that do dog treats, you know what I mean? And like, you think there's a big major issue, we probably have a lot of issues right now, because I know people are using them for animals, right? And then the cute thing is when we see cats and our animals eating the leaves when you're trimming, and they're just like, meh, you know what I mean? So you wonder what the effect is on these dogs, right? It's really unique when that's a unique situation to talk about, and especially when we're we don't want to make a dog sick. There's a general understanding that it can, but when we see these products going out, I always wonder, you know what I mean? I always wonder, now, what's up, Chef Rodney? We got Rodney, guys, who just joined us.
Sorry, a little late, guys, a little late. How's it going?
It's going great. I can barely hear you, buddy, so let's work on that real quick. But we're talking with Nick. There you go. Now we got you. He's got that gamer headset on today, right?
That's how I play my World of Warcraft, man.
Right. So what's unique about the show today, guys, is obviously Chef Rodney and Nick. They're close, right? They live in relatively the same area. So Rodney's been able to go check out the business, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So it's unique. Now, we were just talking about Delta 8, Rodney. This is,
okay.
We'll bring you in on this conversation as well, yep. The differences and stuff like that. And being that you're the strain of the week guy, have you been able to try one of these trade carts that we've been talking about?
Oh yeah, you can't have an amazing product like Krystillion's Delta 8 cards in my backyard and expect me not to fucking try it. Okay, I'm gonna sniff it out. I'm gonna find it, and I'm gonna tell you if it's bullshit. I can honestly say, man, without even a question of it. I mean, Nick's like family. I graduated high school with his girlfriend, and I'm terrible at football, and you could throw a football to where we graduated. So, just like family, but I actually smoke them myself here. This is what I got. This is that the blueberry fugu flavor that he has going on right now. I love it, and it's exactly what Nick would say. It's a good daytime smoke. You can smoke it in the morning. Doesn't mess you up. You can go about your day. There's no psychoactive effects. It's just all around a great product.
Sweet. When I was actually checking out Krystillion online, guys, because you can find them pretty much everywhere right now. I saw the Delta 8 cards, right? So I was like, we're gonna have to do a review on this. So let's get you guys together, get a sweet review on that, because I mean, it really is one of the biggest questions out here in the East Coast right now is Delta 8. Delta 8. Yep. What's Delta 8? How do I get a hold of Delta 8? And then now, like we said, with the FDA, the DEA, and all their guidelines and changes and stuff like that, we still don't have a really broad idea of what's going on. Like you said, Nick, you have your lawyers involved with this, so we can make sure that you guys stay safe, right? We've talked to Tim about it quite a bit. Like we said, it's a strange area. I don't think it's as bad as people think, but like you said, if these things hold, then everybody's illegal, right? I mean, none of us are in compliance by any means.
I'm going to tell you that this is one of the biggest kind of discussions in cannabis law right now is the legality of Delta 8 minor cannabinoids.
So Tim, what's your take on that?
Very strong position on both sides. There are two sides, and two very good arguments. Ultimately, it's going to be up to the courts to decide. Myself and my law partner just put on today. I was laughing because he just today did a virtual NECAN session on Delta 8 and the legalities thereof. Yeah. And what it comes down to from a legal perspective is a conflict between the 2018 Agricultural Improvement Act of the Farm Bill, which clearly states source rule, and the DEA's interpretation. They are not judicial. They are not the judicial branch. They do not interpret the laws. They put out their interpretation, and they're wrong. But there is a strong argument to be made for that side if that's the argument you're trying to make. So it's a great issue. Eventually, there's going to be a test case. Eventually, it's going to go in front of a judge. Eventually, we're going to have a judicial opinion on it.
Tim, I'd be curious to get your take on inside the 2018 Farm Bill, where it states that the only changes in regulation that can be made to the hemp product is by the USDA general and no other federal arm. I'd be curious to hear or kind of get if that's been something that you guys have seen, but that's something that we have seen. I'm just curious to see what if that is the case and that is in the 2018 Farm Bill, as I've read it correctly, what that could potentially mean.
I mean, again, the USDA also, an administrative body, don't really have the authority to say that the Congress can't change a rule that it passed. Congress passed the Farm Bill. The USDA did not pass the Farm Bill. That's a legislatively enacted statute. So whether an administrative agency has the ability or the authority to say it can't be changed is questionable. But the clear language of the Farm Bill says cannabis sativa containing less than 0.3% THC by dry weight is removed, and all derivatives, isomers, everything derived from it is also outside of the scope of the Controlled Substances Act. The argument on the other side is, well, the legislative intent was never to legalize. The question about Delta 8 would be the same about Delta 9 THC. That there are traces of Delta 9. Under 0.3% is not zero. So how about THC extracted from industrial hemp? According to the source rule, if that was sourced from hemp under the 88, that's legal. But the argument is, well, Congress never intended, legislative intent, they never intended to legalize psychoactive substance. We were sold that all the CBD and hemp stuff doesn't get you high, and that's an argument. I don't think it's a very good one. This is why we land on the other side. But the Controlled Substances Act still specifically states Delta 8 as a derivative of cannabis is illegal as a controlled substance. We would say source rule applies. If that Delta 8 is extracted from what is marijuana, according to federal law, then yes, it is illegal. But if it's extracted from hemp, then it's not. There's a lot of back and forth. The more conservative attorneys say, no, 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 no. A little more kind of open, willing to take some chances attorneys like myself are like, yeah, let's go for it. See what happens.
We like those
basically
kinds
tell our
of
clients,
attorneys.
are you ready to be a test case?
Yeah.
Are you ready to
It's
be
one
the
of those
one?
things too. It's about innovation, right? We got to make sure we have to keep pushing the ticket. It's been off the table for so long that we owe it to everyone to keep innovating, understanding what we have. So, I mean, on our end, we have the ability to do some of these things. So it's our responsibility to do them. And I don't believe we're operating outside the law. We're not doing it with ill intent. And there are compounds that we're coming across that are very, very interesting. I believe we may have identified a natural Adderall replacement.
Yep.
There's a bunch of other stuff that's out there. So yeah, I mean, intent and all this stuff aside, we'll abide by the law, but it's pretty fuzzy right now. And I mean, on our end, we're going to keep pushing.
Oh yeah. And it's interesting that you should say that too, Nick, because what was it, a year and a half ago that I first met you and you were like, hey, you're a chef, right? I was like, yeah. You're like, you ever cooked with Delta 8? I'm like, what are you even talking about? And then you're like, let me show you. And so we've kind of been working on some ideas of putting Delta 8 into food. And so I think that's what we're going to try and hit the market with. I mean, we're one of the first pioneers. But to touch on what you were saying, Tim, we love lawyers like you, man. Yeah, we'll be a showcase real quick. But I do got to say one thing, though, like, you know, on the record, ain't nobody died from an OD from cannabis in the last few days, but you got 65 people just in, like, you know, Michigan alone that died with a needle in their arm. You know what I mean? Like,
you just say the last few days there, Chef?
Yeah, the last few days. Seriously. I mean, well, here's the thing. I was reading something this morning, and you know, correct me if I'm wrong, and God forbid anybody lost somebody that way. I know it sucks. I'm not talking down about that. What I'm saying is, like, addiction is real. Okay. It's been proven that cannabis can help with addiction. Fact. Case in point, I am the case. I used to be, dude, a fifth and a half a day whiskey drinker. And now I smoke a lot more weed than that, but that's not the point. You know what I mean? It can hurt. It can definitely hurt you to not, like, you know, face your addictions and kind of deal with them. God forbid, like I said, anybody passed away, but ain't nobody OD on anything in cannabis ever.
No.
Worst case, you just eat everything in your fridge, which is where I come in and makes, you know, me a little happy doing my job, but you get the point, you know? And so, yeah, I'll be a pioneer for Delta in the kitchen. You know what I'm saying?
If you look at the worst thing in cannabis that's ever really happened, was probably the vape card issue, right? I bring this up because every time I say no one's ever died from cannabis, I kind of feel like an asshole when I say that. No offense to anybody that says the same thing. We're not assholes, but you know,
nobody's ever died.
In a weird theory, though, we you know, the vape card issue. I mean, whether it was related to cannabis or not, I don't believe it was related to cannabis.
Not related to cannabis. There's no question. It was not related to
cards. I mean, we spent hours on this subject, right? But like the general population has, because of media, right? Because of the propaganda that was surrounding that for a good few months there, right? And now there's even a good chance it could have been a pre-COVID issue, right? On top of carts that were cheaply made and burning, and you know, we had a pretty
vitamin E in them that was killing people.
Yeah. If you guys are interested in the vaping thing, right, go to our Facebook page. I just posted a thing this week about temperatures and vaping because we brought this up, and honestly, I don't even remember if it was on the show or if it was just in a private conversation I was having with people. But we were talking about temperatures and vaping, and I'm sure Nick could talk a lot about this as well. We see cannabinoids burn off at different temperatures, and when we're talking about, you know, fresh pressed products, and like, you know, for me, you know, we have a lot of arguments where it's like low, you know, 165 degrees because, you know, our first set of cannabinoids are burning off at around 180. But the problem is THCA doesn't convert over to THC until like 220-ish, right? If I'm correct there, roughly.
220,
yep. So, and then obviously they start dying off the harder, and then you get to burn, right? And the conversation we were having was talking about vape carts, and someone asked me my opinion on it. I was like, well, it's the metals inside of it that when they get hot, you know, when metal gets hot and gets red, it will change. And you can't tell me you've never seen a metal that gets hot and change. It doesn't flake off or off gas or something of that nature. And with our current testing procedures, we don't test the after fire part, right? We only test the oil that goes
before it's ignited.
No, that's not true. That's not true.
Oh, that's not true?
No. So there's multiple tests that go through, and I guess I'm speaking a little bit more on the regulated compliant market or the AU market.
Oh, absolutely.
That's where we do
about.
some work, and I got some experience in that space. So what happens with that, and Michigan actually has one of the most rigorous testing when it comes to cartridges because there were issues here. So
well, I was going to say the only car I've ever seen that did that was a Michigan cart. It was from a dispensary in Michigan where they actually tested post-fire, right? Which I thought was amazing. I mean, I don't even interrupt you. Just keep explaining that for us.
Yeah. So what we do, so what ends up happening with the cart manufacturers. So specifically in Michigan, July 1st, what started happening was safety compliance facilities started testing the cartridges for copper and nickel. They were, I guess, let me back up. They were testing it beforehand. They just started failing cartridges for copper and nickel. And the way that they test them is they do an acid etching test where they fill the cartridges with an acid, and then they're able to test after and see if there's any metals that kind of leach off. So when we're doing a formulation, we don't just fill cartridges and test them and hope it goes well. We test each individual component. So first you do the acid etching test on the cartridge, make sure that passes well. Our experience, all ceramic cartridges, there's no metal components, thus no metal. Then we go through, we test the actual distillate itself, make sure that's free and clear of pesticides, metals, all those things. Then we test the terpenes that we're going to flavor it with, right? Make sure it doesn't test for residual solvent, alcohol, things like that. And then once we have those 3 check marks, then we proceed to register a record of formulation. And then from there, we can fill cartridges, get a final test from that batch, and then that's the inventory. So to answer the question, each individual component is very carefully tested because you just need to mess that up once and get that wrong once. And everything that we've been doing is ruined. Like our goal here is to help people. Like we're working with people on their last leg of life. And if I give them something that's harmful, like that's, what am I doing it for? So that's not to kind of jump on that, but that's something I'm passionate about is compliance.
You know how I am a little bit. Like if I'm wrong, correct me so we can both learn. Or you know what I'm saying? Like that's. Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up because now honestly, I feel even better having the carts. You feel me? Because now I already feel good. Yeah, I mean they're great tasting. Joe, I'll make sure I can get you one. Tim, if you want one, let me know. We'll get you one. They're really good, guys. Like they're really always fucking good. Like, okay, so you know how you hit up the cart and you're like, okay, that tastes like a cart. That tastes artificial or fake. Dude, the flavor to these is insane. And I'm not just saying that. I mean, it's good. The product speaks for itself. That's all I'm gonna say. Now
when we convert to Delta 8, do we lose any of the terps? Are we pulling the terps off and putting it back in? Like how's that process work? Because I know a lot of people now, terps is a big thing, right? I mean, you can get terp carts, you can get sauce carts, right? Yep. Which is what ideally, everything but the THC and terps, right? When they separate them. Yep. Explain those 2 processes for everybody that's listening really quick. But the terps, right?
Yeah. So on the terpenes. So first off, terpenes matter. Like I can't stress that enough. I think the amount of science and the research going into it, it's an area that I keep tabs on. It's not an area that we compete in or do a lot of work in. But with our starting product being an isolate-based product, the terpenes and everything else is already removed. So if we're successful in making our distillate, it should be odorless and flavorless. And then from there, we go back and add in terpenes. So then the question becomes, are they cannabis-derived terpenes, or are they botanical terpenes, or is it flavoring? And so we have blends that we make that we feel provide good outcomes and good flavoring.
Now, when you say terps matter, like we realize there's cannabinoids, there's value to terps, especially on a health level, right?
Say that again.
With terps, I mean the question is a lot lately is Delta 8 and terps, right? Because people are learning about terps now. You hit the nail on the head. It's when people kind of think terps are garbage, but they're not. They actually really hold medicinal values, right?
Correct. So I would say the cannabinoid is going to provide the vehicle for what the outcome is going to be, and terpenes are going to provide the nuance to it. So everyone talks about indica or hybrid or sativa-based cartridges. I'm here to tell you, when it's distillate, it doesn't matter.
Nope.
It only matters when you go back and add the terpenes in. So all those people, like, I like a good hybrid. You like hybrid terps. You like a terp blend. You like indica. It's a terpene blend. It's all the same distillate. It's all the same stuff. And a lot of people don't understand that. There's a lot of bud tenders that don't understand that. But the base product is, it's water, and you're putting in your different Kool-Aid.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And it's funny because I'll go to a dispensary. You know, here in Michigan, we have recreational in addition to medical. And they're like, oh, this is the highest THC percentage. And I look at them, I'm like, that doesn't fucking matter. Like, I was like, okay, now I know what kind of person you are. But I put that to the side and I just let them keep going. They do hit you with some facts, but you got to really know your shit. You know what I'm saying? For example, we were talking about the burning point of cannabinoids. Terpenes have a burn point as well. You know what I'm saying? Anything over 311, you can kiss piney and goodbye. You know what I mean? And that's like, that's my point. That's
when
where
you're over 400, right? Literally, when you get about 400, right? You're literally toxifying everything. You're burning.
Well, actually, it's a caryophyllene, or how do I say that?
Caryophyll?
Yeah, caryophyllene. I'm saying it wrong. But anyways, it's in a lot of the blends that I've tasted and then things that I've noticed and cooked with. That doesn't burn off till 495. So you've got a lot of wiggle room, but it depends on which terpene you want and how you want it administered. So if you want to pull it through THC, 315, that takes off this many terps that you can't use. You know what I'm saying? So that's going to be something it's new to me and it's new to a lot of other people. Because again, Nick, yes, you hit it on the head. Terps matter. A terp can make a dish or break a dish. My sous chef hit me with some gummies. We're coming out with some gummies. You can't. There they are. And so they're really, really good. The problem is they're a little bit heavy one way, so we want to dial them back in for that sour effect. We know this, but still, I mean, it's a really good product, and we just, knowing what we know about different flavors, different terps and stuff like that, we threw it in here, and then boom, there's research and development. I ate a really, really strong one earlier, but it's cool.
The next, it's cool, man. It's cool.
It's cool.
We've noticed you're a little relaxed right now, so you can tell.
Yeah. I'm gonna take those with me wherever I go.
So another question I want to ask, all right, because I think there's a lot of confusion on this issue as well, right? Is when everybody goes and buys that vape cart, right? And that vape cart has a sour D or a terpene flavor of such. Is it really we're talking about carts earlier. This is mainly another cart question. Is it really what's in the cart? You know what I mean? Like you said, there's a couple different versions of terps, which people need to understand. There are cannabis-derived terps and there are other natural plant-based derived terps, right? Because some of the blueberry stuff they can get from a blueberry, right? And then there's also fake stuff, which that's the cereal stuff to me. You know what I mean? It's just like cereal, right? So there's a lot of differences there, which you kind of hit on some. But my question is like, I know you guys are producing stuff, right? And it really, this is where, again, regulations and restrictions come in for me, because it's like, proper labeling, right? Are these people really getting a sour diesel strain in there, or is it just the terp profiles you're putting back in on a mixed blend of oils? Like, what's the oil that these guys are coming up with for this?
So
I know it's different for production manufacturers, but like, where are we deriving the THC and all that stuff from?
So I guess I'll talk about the terpenes on that side. So when you look at, so you can go just like on a hemp product, for example, you can go look at a certificate of analysis for terpenes, and there's a bunch of different terpenes that are going to show things like how much limonine's in there, how much limonol, humulene, whatever that might be. And that certificate of analysis is going to show you that of what percentage everything is. So you can take your base products and you can create it yourself. There are some terpenes that are very specific to cannabis, to where you have to get them from, or at least I've only found you have to get them from cannabis-derived terpenes. But you do see the terpene blends that are sold as, let's just say, sour diesel, you mentioned, for example, where people have taken a lot of the individual components and then mixed them together to make what it is, instead of deriving it, through steam distillation to distill off the exact terpene profile. So you'll find a couple of different things. The the people who are really into the what I'll call like the heady stuff, the stuff that's really heavy in the terpenes, that stuff's all going to be based, in my opinion. I wouldn't even go to distillate at that point. I would go straight to live resin, and live resin has that full terpene profile. You're able to get it right after harvest, and that's the most boutique fresh stuff. If that's what you're into, there's nothing better than a live resin cartridge.
Now, I got another question for you too. This is great, man, because these are the questions I answer every day. Literally, like
you're building the FAQ page right now.
We're like fucking 100 times a day, right, Nick? But no, these are what's great is you're Michigan. Like, so like I said, I was dealing with a dispensary in Michigan for a long time that was making the absolute best quality I've ever seen in my life, right? From the cartridge, the actual cartridges that you guys were using, or not you specifically, but Michigan was using, because like you said, you guys have a heavy compliance, right? There's a standard there, and a lot of you guys are actually living up to it, right? Which we see standards everywhere, but it's not necessarily what happens, right?
And they're not that hard. You know what I'm saying? Like, come on, dude. If you see somebody not meeting standards, it's like, dude, come on. They're not even that
right. Well, it's like a restaurant,
like,
right? You know what I mean? Like everybody gets the same meat in the back door. It just depends on how it hits the plate, and like everything it goes through between, you know, staying out of a danger zone, being handled, to being prepared. You know, me and Rodney, we could talk about this kind of stuff all day long. It's sanitation, safety. Yeah, right. You know, there's a lot to it, but like there's no difference when it comes to a cart or a product that somebody's making, because, you know, in the lab, it's, you know, it comes down to equipment, cleanliness, all these things that you guys hold your integrity to create a product that you, like you said, you're, you know, probably at this point in time, 50 to 60% of people that are consuming these products are medically based, right? Let's be honest. Like, we have a huge medical market. You know, it's an older market. We don't need to give anybody popcorn lung. You know what I mean? And it's not worth the hot dog water sauce. You know what I mean? But the biggest thing is like when people are buying these things, what are they getting in the boxes? You know what I mean? What are these guys really getting? What's the best way they can check these products in a state of non-compliance, right? Now, you know, again, with these carts, you know, we're talking about the terpenes, we're talking about all these different processes. Now, for me, what is, you know, you guys are running a lab, what is one of the biggest problems we see with the cannabis that's coming in? Like, is it a metal issue? Is it a pesticide issue? Because I mean, we see a lot of failures. We know stuff fails.
I've heard like mold.
Well, I mean, and mold issues, because I mean, let's talk about this for now. This is something nobody ever talks about. What do you guys see? You know, I mean, what is the general, like, what is concerning you, you know, in the lab space, I guess, about the cannabis that's coming in? Because we've seen a lot of failures, and in most states, metals, pesticides, those aren't required. Those are not required tests to have to put a product out, right?
So in the regulated marijuana market, those tests are required, and you have to pass a certain parts per million in order for that to be a compliant product. On the hemp side, there's much less regulation on that side of it. So, and that's really one of the reasons why we don't do that initial extraction. So if we kind of walk down the line, you have the farmer that grows the plant material. And then from there, in the hemp space, hemp's too big to do some of the boutique stuff that marijuana does, because it's federally legal. So you got guys that are growing 20,000 acres out in Montana. That's a lot of plant material. They're going for volume, not for quality. And that's what, by the time it gets to me, it's been deemed that, hey, this isn't really a sellable quality. We got to press this into oil. So that's where we fall in the supply chain. But we don't do that initial extraction. We have other partner organizations that they take the biomass or plant material, bring it down into an oil, and then we refine the oil from there. A few things that we learned from being in that space for a little bit was, number one, if you have any sort of allergies, the amount of pollen that's just getting thrown around, or just, you know, how bad that is no good. And number two, I don't want to subject my people to throwing around moldy stuff. You can get that removed by the time it's kind of in that crude stage, because you heat it up and all that other good stuff in the process. But for us, we take crude oil and we'll distill it. We'll make isolates. We'll do those things with our scaled out distillery. So on the hemp side, there's a much higher likelihood, but before we work with anyone, we have a full panel certificate of analysis that comes through that makes sure that the stuff that's going through our machine is good stuff. So we have some kind of checks and balances there. And then similarly on the marijuana side, it's a lot of, it's product that might not be able to be monetized. So maybe it did fail a test and we can clean it up in line, or it's trim where there's not a lot of value there, but they want to get something out of it. So it just, the marijuana market's obviously a lot smaller scale, much more boutique.
Now, when it is, right? It's very boutique, right? The question I kind of want to steer you to, and you're saying things that are helping me out here, pressing, right? Now you were talking about live resin, right? There's live rosin too, correct? And then there's what I kind of consider, for me, one of my favorite things, and to me, it's the ultimate medicine. It's the ultimate in everything. It's, obviously to me, it's a water-based bubble hash or a fresh press. Fresh press to me is like 5 to 7 days off of a cut, and we're pressing it. Explain to us those differences or the similarities between those. So when somebody does buy that cart that says live resin or live rosin or whatnot, what are the actual technical definitions of these products?
So live resin, so that has to do with the freshness of the cut. So that is going to be cut right away. It's still going to be wet, and you're going to flash freeze it. And by doing that, you're able to lock in. When you flash freeze it, it actually separates the water molecules out. They spread out to the edges of the flash freezer, and you're able to preserve all of that content. And then when you go to extract that frozen content in a very, very cold BHO type of extraction facility or rig, you're able to introduce a solvent that is taking out both the terpenes and the cannabinoid content in line, and those all come together. But you are using a solvent, you are having to boil off that solvent. So that's one area versus like a rosin, where you use something like a rosin press, for example. That's more of heat and pressure that, you'd have if you really wanted to see a sad sight, you could see someone with parchment paper and a hair straightener pressing down on a bud and seeing the honey come out of it. It's obviously a little bit more of a scientific, technical version of that, but you're just applying heat and pressure versus cold. So that's one. Hey, choo, there we go. And then bubble hash is usually used with some sort of like a cold water bath in order to make, whatever that might be. And then there's different bubble hash machines. So at the end of the day, you're looking at various levels of heat and pressure and different ways to try to compact material into a clean, consistent, concentrated type of product.
Yep. Which, in those two forms that we just described, typically keeps majority of all the cannabinoids, right? Like we don't, because like heat and what I think a lot of people forget as well is curing, right? We lose a lot of cannabinoids in just a state of curing.
What was that last part?
Oh, I was talking about curing. Like when people cure cannabis, right? We lose a lot of our cannabinoids just in off gases and in the cure process, right?
And a lot of the material. So, you have the bud and you have the trichomes on the end that get really sticky, right? Depending on how that's even trimmed, you lose some stuff. So you have these people that have these large scale operations that have these giant machine trimmers, and it's just, I could cry watching it happen versus go hire a barber fresh out of barber school and have him or her trim up some stuff. And that will be some good looking buds for decent labor there. And you'll retain that quality. So yeah, there's definitely a lot that goes into just maintaining the cannabinoid count that you have. That's always my main concern is like, you have 100% cannabinoid count on this plant to start with. How can I get as close to 100% as possible is what I'm the most concerned about is yield.
Now, working in a lab, right? The next question I have for you is the other processes, right? And there's a lot of back and forth about how safe, BHO is, CO2, and, all these extraction methods, whether it's MCT, there's a lot of other methods out there that people don't even talk about that are processes, right? I mean, not to take too much time there, but like, how safe is a BHO? How safe is an ethanol? How safe is a CO2 as far as being consumed? You know what I mean? Again, I know it's really up to the person that is doing it, but I mean, a lot of the talk is, vacuuming off the off gases, things like that. Can you just go into a little bit more of an explanation for the people listening that might not understand what the hell we're talking about today? Because we're talking about a lot right now, and these are all my concerns, man. I love it because usually I'm the one pitching it to people, and they're just like, well, we don't know.
Sure. So there's really, I would say, to address 90% of how things are extracted in the cannabis market. It's either going to be done one of three ways. One is ethanol, the other is CO2, and the last is BHO, which is a hydrocarbon system. They all have their pluses and their minuses, and some of it has to do with marketing, and some of it has to do with what everything is. So I'll start with ethanol.
Let's say real quick with ethanol though, when you talk about the extraction process, is it the same as these guys are making tinctures with, or is that a different system?
It should be a different system.
I knew the answer to that question. I just wanted to make sure that people listening, because I mean, when we say ethanol, I think a lot of people just hear, ethanol extractions, ethanol based tinctures, ethanol based this, and with ethanol, it's used in multiple platforms. So I just want to clarify for everybody, because BHO and especially CO2, I mean, they're pretty specific to what their outcomes are, right?
Yep. And so to touch on the tincture side of it. So really at the end of the day, if you're left with either a crude oil, if you have a really high end crude oil, you could potentially dissolve it in alcohol to make whatever tincture you're going to make or final product. You start getting into a conversation or question of bioavailability, why you would do that versus MCT coconut oil that has a high bioavailability or absorption rate. But that's I guess a different conversation. But when you get into ethanol, it's first off, it's organic. You can have organic ethanol. So if you're taking something out of the field that's organic, that's kind of nice. The other side of it is for something like hemp, for example, it's easy to scale to be a pretty big operation. And when you look at how many thousands of acres have been planted for hemp and the lack of processing power, the ability to scale quickly is worth it. And so the good side of it is you can do a lot of extraction in a pretty short period of time. The potential bad parts of it are if you don't do it at the right temperature, you can drag some undesirable features such as fats, waxes, potentially water soluble content, which you have to go back and clean up in post-process. The good side of it is the yields are pretty good and the material could be organic and it's relatively inexpensive to get started. So that's one side of it. The other, I would say, part of ethanol is you have to make sure that that the ethanol is boiled off, right? People don't want that stuff. They don't want the residual solvent, and that gets tested for. If you're doing all your proper testing, residual solvents should be tested for, and there should be no residual solvents with the oil that's produced. But that takes an extra process of decarbing. So it's, there's an extra step in there. Mm-hmm. You get into
is that a step that we see? That's a step that we see skipped a lot, right?
Yeah.
Would be that.
Luckily we know how to do it. So we'll do it for a service fee, and that's what we do. So, and then on the CO2 side, so the thing that is nice about CO2, it's solventless extraction. It's widely used in consumer goods. It's used in the decaffeination of coffee. It's used in vanilla bean extraction. It's used in a lot of consumer goods. So people are very comfortable with CO2, and the CO2 equipment companies crush with their marketing. I kind of laugh at it because it all comes to me. I clean up all the things that are bad about it, and whether it's ethanol, BHO, or CO2, it all looks pretty similar and acts, walks, and chews gum all the same. So I always kind of I always kind of giggle when I see the keyboard warriors out there, you know, talking about how great CO2 is. But the big thing, the big advantage for CO2 is that it's a solventless extraction that allows for, that takes out the terpenes and the cannabinoids. It does tend to drag potentially some undesirables, like maybe some fats and waxes that you might have to remediate, or, you know, post-process, like someone like me cleans that up. Other potential negative of it is the amount of pressure, the PSI, the pressure per square inch that CO2 is required to have. There really haven't been any devastating explosions or anything like that. But when you look at the other extraction techniques and you look at CO2 and you look at like what's required for it, it's a lot of pressure. And, you know, it's just, that introduces potentially some hazard, right? And then, going to BHO, that introduces its own hazard. It's an extremely volatile gas, right? You can use butane, you can use propane, right? You light your grill with propane, you light your cigarette with butane, right? These are explosive gases. So we have what's called a C1D1 room, which is an explosion-proof room, which is removing all the gases. And then we have the metering to indicate if those gases are present, because butane, for example, there's no odor to it. So if that thing's leaking and you don't have a sensor, you do not know that it's there. And so that's definitely a big risk there, right? You have an explosive gas. The other side of it, though, is BHO does produce those boutique live resins, and you can make diamonds, and there's all of the more heady type of products that are derived from it. Oh, and by the way, you don't have to go and distill it. They're ready to roll. So you get to cut out an additional post-process with going that way. And so and from a crude oil perspective, in my mind, I've seen CO2, I've seen ethanol, I've seen BHO. In my eyes, there's no question that BHO is by far the highest quality. It is expensive to get started. It is expensive to scale. And so that's where kind of you have your trade-off.
Right. Now with the propane, though, this isn't, you know, tell me if I'm wrong on this, but from my understanding, one of the best ways to tell if it's propane is it has more of a different color than most oils, correct?
I don't know the answer to that question.
All right, good. Well, you know, from what I understood, it was like an orangey, more orangey kind of thing. It was one of those things that I was taught how to kind of tell with products, you know what I mean? Because a lot of it you can't really tell sometimes. You don't know what you're getting, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes, especially in the markets that we've been in and being new to regulations, a lot of this stuff doesn't come heavily marked, I guess you could say, right? It just it's in a bottle, and you're hoping that what you get is what you're told, and it looks right, it smells right. Hey, you know, like you said, we rock with it. Unless you have a lab that tests this stuff, it becomes really confusing, right? Yeah. Like we talked about before, we've seen some really, you know, bad products. I was wondering, again, I don't think we answered it. I think we kind of blew by it, but we asked the question was, what's the one thing you see the most of as a lab? What do you think the biggest problems are? Is it you know, metals? Is it pesticides? And with that being said, is it something that we're seeing that is from like our water systems? Is it something we're seeing from like nutrient systems and bases that people are using, cheating on? And the reason why I'm asking is because, you know, a lot of this are conversations we have, especially with our byproducts, you know what I mean, where if somebody might be using something really heavily in one field and the next field downstream will pick that up, you know what I mean? But like, you know, we talked to Dr. Uma, who's all about metals, and we know what metals do to people. And again, like you said, in the markets that should be legal, and if you're following the rules, you should be testing for this stuff, right? But I know in a lot of these black market stuff, I mean, it's an expensive test. So a lot of people kind of just get their, you know, their CBD, you know, get their cannabinoid tests, so people know what the, you know, the THC is in, so they can put it in that, say, that black market container.
Well, the old way of doing business, you never ask for it. You look at it, goes, oh, that looks good, you know, I'll have it, you know, whatever it is, or you just take it because it's there. Right? So I'm not an agronomist, but agronomy is one of the biggest areas where I've seen farmers, specifically on the hemp side, because that's at scale. I've seen them try to not go that way and understand about soil health and plant nutrition. But that is a really, really big side of it, is having good soil health, because the plant, especially if you're growing a lot of outdoor, for example, cannabis is going to suck up all the nutrients that are in there, including any potential heavy metals that are in the soil. So like here in the Midwest, for example, there's a lot of soybean farmers that were not doing so well with their soybeans. So they said, let's try hemp. Well, soybeans tend to destroy soil and leave back heavy metals, and the hemp that they plant on top of it is going to just suck that up. And that's a big problem that you see with imported hemp. There's a lot of Chinese hemp that gets imported, and it helps drive the price down. Those are things that they're not testing for, and that, they're using hemp as a means to clean their land, and then they're sending it over here for product creation. So those are, I would say the soil health is an area where I've seen a lot of fatal mistakes get made. Not an area that I'm particularly, I would say, really qualified to talk about, but an area that I've seen people like, man, I wish I would have done more there.
Yeah. Well, no, these are all great. This is a great conversation because people are growing, right? And they go buy products and they try to do what they think is best, and sometimes it's not the best. And then towards the end of the runs, like Ronnie was saying, we see PM, we see molds. We're seeing these issues, and a lot of it, and with PM, it's like so many different things can create those issues, right? And even genetics, where it comes down to some genetics. If you get a strong genetic, your chances of having some of these issues are going to be far less. But I think this is a question that not many people talk about. When we did an event last couple of years ago, the Pheno Cup, one of our biggest things for that whole challenge was to trace and track what people were growing in. And when we tested to see what the variations of testing would come back, right? Whether we could put it to, like what you said, soil, I'm glad we're talking about soil, because there's so many different people that talk about what we consider live soil now, right? And there's a couple different versions of live soils, correct? Compost based soils, and then you got the pro mixes, and then you got obviously the Fox Farms, and they all serve kind of a general purpose, but like on different levels of growing, these things all have different values, and you realize what they really is in them, right? And it's so hard, like you said. Now, when we're talking about soils, right, and we're talking about cannabis, right, one of the big things I'm kind of excited about that nobody ever talks about is how well cannabis can be used to pull up shit out of the soils, right? Like oils and contaminants, and clean up soils. We've seen projects like this. Do you know much about that aspect of cannabis at all?
Not enough to probably do your viewers any justice. I just know that it's happening, and I think it's great, right? I mean, we need to find different ways to clean the earth, good, bad, or indifferent. I think we all know that humans are causing pollution, right? So if we can find a way to negate that, like, why would we not? And so I think that is something that's really great. And I'm personally interested to see where the fiber market goes, because that grows faster than trees. It grows like bamboo, and it can be used in building materials and things like that.
It's funny you should mention that, because I'm, in the next few years, I want to buy a plot of land and build a house, and I want to build my house out of hempcrete. You know what I mean? You don't really hear about that, but from what I've heard, it stands the test of time. So that's definitely that's a point of pride to me, to know that, hey, I'm about to start making this living as this traveling chef that's putting, cannabis in food. Cannabis. What way to give? My house is built of the shit. I mean, come on, dude. Full circle. So yeah, it's amazing what we're doing.
Well, it's antibacterial, right? So it's really great in those forms. It's actually strong. It's way stronger than concrete.
Oh,
I mean, it's
stronger. What they say, 50 times stronger or 100 times stronger than concrete, something like that?
Well, I know the burn rate on it, or the flame rate on it. I know it's super high rated.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
So I mean, it's smarter. I heard that there were some energy studies done, and you save so much money, X, Y, and Z. A lot of companies have been talking about bringing it in, but we're waiting for legalities and things like that. You know what I mean? Even for a building material that could revolutionize the way that we do things, And then, like you're saying, it's cleaning the soil. We're trying to take care of the earth here. Why are we still catching resistance? And Tim, I know that's why you're over there scratching your head going, I see both sides. What is going on? You know what I mean? It's just like, come on, guys. Like, when are we actually going to get our heads out of our fucking asses and start healing from this shit? You know what I'm saying? Why is it still illegal in some states?
I think we're seeing hempcrete. I think we're seeing the people that are looking at hemp as a viable industrial fiber is probably the best way to do it as a material, because you can use it for plastics. We see Lego, right? Lego had made a big announcement that in the next couple of years they're going to be changing all their plastics to a cannabis-based plastic. And I say cannabis because I don't want to say hemp because it's really the same thing. So I want to get people to understand that there is really no difference when we're talking about hemp, cannabis, marijuana. I mean, there's strains that are better suitable for applications, right? You know what I mean? There's industrial strains. There's flower strains that we want to keep for our smoke and our pressing and our oils.
There's also some mental effects from smoking said cannabis.
We don't want to smoke you can't smoke your hempcrete, right? So that's a fun, that's the thing. So it's like when people have a stigma against plastics, hempcretes, fibers, and like we've seen woods, like wood fibers, you can do decking kind of base fibers, which we've seen people use to plastics now. Now, hopefully they'll switch to something like this because again, it's what's nice about this stuff. It's actually, you can make it so it's also, it will decompose on its own. You know what I mean? So it won't create issues in our issues in our oceans and stuff like that. But it can be strong enough to hold your shampoo bottle for its duration.
A bird.
Right?
Let's say this. Let's say that you got Let's say this comes with a blunt or a joint or whatever have you, and it's made out of hemp. Okay, a hemp, plastic or whatever have you. A bird or an animal can eat this and not fucking die. That's pretty spot on. You know what I'm saying? Because it's just hemp. Will they get high? Probably. I don't know a bird's life, but the point is, like, you know what I'm saying? They're not gonna die from it.
Yeah.
Eat all the fucking bird seed. That's what's gonna happen. Like, best Tweety episode ever. But that's what I'm saying. Like, it's recyclable. Why is it? I just don't get it. It blows my mind, man.
Well, it's cool. It's biodegradable. It's recyclable. But it's moisture resistant, right? So it's really unique in that way. It's fire resistant, which is something that Nick brought up before. But like even crops and things of that nature hold a fire resistant value. Forest fires, right? You know what I mean? Stuff that's happening right now that we see a lot that's going crazy out west, and prayers to everybody that's going through this out west and all of our Canna family and everybody's families out there. It's not even about cannabis at this point.
Even with cannabis, I mean, this last couple of weeks has been rough. Colorado had an early freeze. A lot of plants went down that way. Yep. And then you have all these fires in California and Southern Oregon. And I mean, at this point in the game, all of these plants are starting to mature with their trichomes and they're getting very sticky and they have ash and smoke raining down on them. Yep. And from what I heard is we should be expecting a lot of hickory OG this year.
It's not funny, but it's funny. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know it's super unfortunate. I mean, I've talked to just some absolutely heartbroken people that, they put a lot of money on the line. You put a lot of risk on the line. I mean, you're even risking trying not to go above that 0.3% to begin with. So like you got some balls to even get in this in the first place and try to make that compliant product, because 0.3% is where you're legal or you're not. And
right.
So
to raise that number, right?
Aren't they trying to bump that to 1 now?
Yeah, no, well, there's places in the country that do 1%. Yeah. Tim can talk about this real quick. And it's been introduced on bills, right? So there is regulations that are being used right now that classify as 1%. I know a couple of like global conditions, it's been a few of the topics of legalization. What number do they use now? What standard are we going by? Is the UN gonna do anything, or is any of these guys gonna say anything and go to that 1% number? You know what I mean? Can we do that? Is it something that I mean, should we do that? I think we should. I mean, does 1%
I just feel like
really...
1% a lot easier to obtain than 0.3%. You feel me? Like it's
Well, 0.3, like Nick said, man, the chances of getting dude. I mean, you can have so many issues. You could run long. You could, the longer you run, the harder you get, right? Even in curing, like you gotta be careful about your curing process because you could make your stuff hot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, even in the final products too, right? You want to have a high dose CBD tincture. By the time you go through and you concentrate that oil down to a spot, your THC is going to be concentrated, and you're only going to be able to dilute that down a certain point and still keep it 0.3% THC. And so by taking it up to 1% or, whatever, there's a bunch of different lobbying groups that are trying to go for different things, but 1% is a number I've heard a lot of. So if you go with 1%, it opens up a lot of different possibilities for different things, right? We can mix different things. So right now, if we're going for high dosage stuff, we have to supplement our oil with different isolates. So we hit that threshold, and that's expensive, right? It's extra formulation time. It's risk aversion at that point. And so we have, I don't want to go throw out, $100,000 order because it came back at 0.4, and you send out your test results of your batch and you just kind of sit there. You're like, all right, this is it. Here it comes. A couple of days later, you're on ice and wait for it to come back. And it's always beautiful when it comes back. Great. But, early on, our first deal, our first ever opportunity, I don't know if I should even say this or not, but we botched it. We botched it bad. We made a tincture and it came back hot and we had to destroy it. It was like, well, shit, that was expensive, and you make these bets. And so being able to have a little bit more leniency doesn't mean you need to push all the way to the edge. It just allows you to kind of operate pretty comfortably. And especially the farmers are the ones that, watching someone do a 20-acre field, it comes back at 0.5% and they have to burn it. That sucks. That's a whole summer's worth of work and investment to get zero. You don't get that with corn. You don't get that with soybeans or vegetables or whatever. You don't just burn your shit because you grew it a little hot. So it's tough. It's tough, but it's definitely an interesting time.
It is crazy. We're going to shift gears here right now, guys. This conversation is going great. We're learning a lot today. It was great to have you come in and clarify a lot of things for these listeners and the people watching the show, and the questions we're getting. So let me switch gears to Tim really quick because there's a little bit of news again. I want to touch base back on, I know we got fired up at the beginning of the show about the Vermont situation, but just in a quick standpoint, where do we stand right now? According to the news, we finalized a bill, correct? For a market price. All right. So in Vermont, what is this? Where are we at right now?
We are farther along than we've ever been. That's the short answer. And that is S54, as we both know, had a House version and a Senate version. Back in March, there was a conference committee assigned that was going to reconcile the two versions into one bill. They got put on ice by COVID up until about 2 weeks ago, when all of a sudden Phoenix rises from the ashes. The conference committee started meeting and they started doing work. And yesterday they released the final bill, S54's final compromise conferenced out version. So at that point, it needed to pass what's known as a rules committee. It's a procedural aspect of the legislation that allows it to come to the floor for a vote. Right through. Same day it was released, rules committee passed it through, approved it. And from what I hear now, we are scheduled for a vote in the Senate and the House tomorrow and Friday. I'm assuming it passes both. The Senate is a sure thing. The House is a most likely sure thing. A little more of a challenge in the House, but it does seem at this point that it will get to Governor Scott's desk. And then there, of course, there's still a big question about what the governor is going to do. But we feel confident for a lot of different reasons I don't want to bore everybody with, that he will not sign it, not be excited about it, but let it become law without signature, which is an option in Vermont.
Now, law without a signature, huh?
Yep. I think what he did with legalization in 2018. It's not a veto. It allows it to become law. He doesn't endorse it. He doesn't necessarily agree with it. It's a
like he not guilty
technique.
So it's basically a not guilty check mark. He's just not going to.
It's a no plea. Exactly. I'm not saying I'm guilty, but I'm not saying I'm innocent either.
So basically, at the end of the day, as long as he doesn't say no, it could become a law, right?
Well, if you vetoed it, then it doesn't. Then it goes back, and there are not enough votes in the Vermont legislature to override a veto. You need quite a few, a supermajority. It does not have that support. So if he vetoes it, it's dead. No question about it. But there's a lot of political ramifications from doing so. And given kind of the circumstances, the COVID, the need for money, his election campaign and who he's facing in 6 weeks, we think there's a good chance that he'll hold his nose and let this become law, because it's a good idea. We need it in Vermont. We need it desperately right now. I'm really getting tired of having to defend people, good people who find themselves in felony charges for growing medicine, including
Well, a lot of these cases, like we discussed earlier,
and we're just taking on pro bono, who was just raided and arrested for 15 plants.
That's it.
Just growing for his own medicine. Gets me very, very upset. And thankfully, once we have a tax and regulated market and we have commercial cultivation licenses, we won't see that happen anymore.
Right. And I mean, these guys are facing, and he's facing felonies on this, right? I mean, that's what people
along with his caretaker and his caretaker's husband, who had nothing to do with this at all. They just take care of this poor guy, veteran, their children. Sheriff's County storming the house, guns drawn, with children on the presence, over 15 plants.
It's insane.
Beside myself with it. And I'm tired of it. I'm tired of this happening in our state. We need to move past this. And for all the little petty problems people have with the bill, talk to me about it after you've had your house raided by law enforcement, after you've had semi-automatic weapons drawn in front of your children over some pot. Come talk to me about your problems.
I mean, and these aren't just young punks either, right? These are just
47 years old, Army veteran, quadriplegic. It's disgusting. And I'm very much looking forward to getting past that. And we need to get past that as a country.
Absolutely.
But if it's state by state and that's how we have to do it, then that's how we have to do it. And you know what? We'll get Vermont, and then we're going to fight for New York, and we'll get New York, and we're going to fight for Pennsylvania, and we're going to fight for Florida, and we're going to fight one at a time, and we're going to keep going.
Maybe
because it's like
not
dominoes.
Ohio.
Let's get Indiana. That's what I really want.
Jump over them. No.
Hey, nobody's been New Hampshire.
I'm only
Come on,
talking
guys.
about the Buckeye
You figure our state next door, right? New Hampshire's also in a mess, but I mean, they went backwards too a bunch of years now. So it's sad to see New Hampshire. But you raise a great point, Tim. I mean, we get people still going to jail. We get people still in jail, and it's for what we see, it's ridiculous. We got to expunge some stuff. We get the expungement stuff is coming up, guys. Check that out.
And we still have far to go on that. The expungement bill that's just passed through is automatic expungements for misdemeanors. Unfortunately, up until a couple of years ago, over an ounce or over 2 ounces for the last decade resulted in felony charges. Felonies are not being expunged in that. So what do? Do we scrap the expungement bill because it doesn't handle felonies? No. We go ahead, we take what we get, we go, great, automatic expungements on the misdemeanors, and we immediately start fighting for automatic expungements on felonies.
Because you can make an amendment to that
and
bill.
you fight for a mile.
Right.
But if you never make that first inch, you never even make it past the starting line. So we're excited, though. Things are going along well, and this is going to help a lot of people.
The only downside is you can't ever forget that the government said before there was no medicinal value to this. They lied to the American people, man.
They lie to us every day.
That's my point. And so, like, when you get people believing that, this is my point, they're gonna say the same fucking thing without even knowing, But then when it's your own uncle that's a veteran or someone that that could be healing from this, they're on their last legs of life, man, and they just need something to make it a little bit easier to get through the fucking day.
Mm-hmm.
Come on, bro.
Well, the whole veteran thing, it could be that's a whole nother show we could have for
it's a whole nother,
the way they're treated, the way
multiple
it's
shows,
been
man.
handled, the way the VA's been working. I mean, these guys should be protected. They should be able to get some medicine like everybody else can right now, and they should be able to get it insured. I mean, I don't understand why insurance companies don't look at this any differently than any other pharmaceutical that is technically legal in these states to sell. I mean, it was an essential drug, right? Like, why can't we get this insured for these people? Like, any of our patients that we have probably a number of patients we can talk about, guys, that literally cannot afford medicine.
Each one of us knows hundreds, you know what I'm saying?
Right. They're such a patient, that they can't work. Or that's why they're patients. They had, for whatever reason it is, they can't work, they can't get out of a car, they can't get to the dispensary, right? And like even in Tim's case with the client we're talking about, if I heard you right before, Tim, he can't even get to the dispensaries, right? So this is another reason
why
it's
rural area of the state, quadriplegic, very, challenged. He said to me, he spent the entire quarantine learning to growing his medicine. It was what kept him going. It's what kept him waking up every morning. It excited him. It gave him, something to look forward to every day. And to have these sheriff's deputies come in and just tear it all, rip it off with guns pointed at his face. I mean, it makes me sick to my stomach.
Sadly, that's something we hear about a lot with the veterans and PTSD and people being able, and just people PTSD, being able to go out into a grow and how much it's calming. Like to go actually touch a plant and go play with a plant and to trim a plant. You're so delicate, and it's an experience that is wonderful for these people, even in therapy. I mean, it's being used as a therapeutical tool is to bring vets out into a field, right? And to grow a crop. Like it's like you said, it's from this quarantine has taken a lot of people and put them in those positions this year, right? Where they, you know, whether it's a corn or they're raised bed gardening or cannabis or people just trying to do hemp. I can't tell you how many people came to me surprised out of my mind with they're either growing hemp. Hey, can you find me a clone?
Yeah.
How do I do this? I get messages all the time from people sending me pictures and asking questions, and they're just really excited people. We see it right now online with a lot of the group chats where there's just a lot of new growers that just wanting to learn and take that in. And like I always say, I've been, you know, my background's a chef. There's 900 ways to cook that egg, right? Show me yours. And the same thing happens in cannabis. What the thing I hate to see in cannabis is when the people get upset by this, right? Because it's like everybody has a question. We all, you know, we can Google all day long, and I can get you 15 different answers as well to my one question, right? So nothing's better than experience to talk to. And then even when you see people online, and literally this is why In the Weeds started, guys. Literally, go to my page, go look at a grower that puts a new thing up there, then you got these guys are just being kind of rude to them, or you know, then there's a little war, then there's little differences, and it becomes a war. It's like, dude, who argues over scrambled eggs, right? That's, you know, it's like everybody has a different way. We should respect that and learn something from it. It's like what we were talking about before, like with soils, right? I mean, just let's talk about soils. That's a whole different game, and you can run right through to like hydro and no soil and aquaponics, where you know you got fish in a tank, you know what I mean, and then you're actually, you know, growing cannabis. You can do that, right? A lot of cool things. One thing I really want to talk about right now, and you know, this has something to do with even Nick, is the FDA, right? So the FDA has announced last week, and I believe it's today, Wednesday, that they're going to teach marijuana growers and researchers how to protect trade secrets, right? So again, Tim, I don't know if you can give us any insight on what's going on here. One of my big questions I want you to end with, though, is if the FDA is teaching people and showing people these tricks, again, why are we not legalizing this? Why are we having these issues with the FDA versus DEA? It's like every week it's like a Democrat and Republican pissing match between the two. One week they're like no, and then the other guy goes and does something against them, and then it's a back and forth. Now it's confusing.
Yeah.
This is something that's valuable, though, right?
There's no question about that. Our government is dysfunctional. Our government is broken on a lot of levels. It's hypocritical. It's still based in this Puritan mentality. There are still people who just refuse to understand that the way things have been doesn't make it right. And it's incredibly frustrating. That's, you know, I call Vermont a bubble of sanity. You know, at least our state government isn't too bad, especially compared to the national level. You know, national politics are a joke. And that's just reality. That's what we live in. It sucks. It's unfortunate. We can all complain. We can bitch about it all day. There's not much we can do about it. Not unless you got a couple $1 billion in your name. All we can do is worry about local. We can worry about what happens here. We do have control over the people who make the decisions here in Vermont. You know, elections are within 10, 20 votes. Votes do matter. People do matter. We have a citizens legislature. So this is not these career politicians with staffs and offices and all the spending accounts. No, it's just people like, you know, not quite like you and me, because you still need quite a bit of money to be able to, you know, be in the legislature, but nothing like at the national level. You know, and it's still not great. It's not perfect, but it's also not horrible. And if we can make our little space here, and, you know, I can't speak for Michigan, but if we can make our space here a little better, let's do it.
Oh, we're in the same mindset, man. It's you know, listen, a little bit at a time. You know, consistency is the key here, and it's start local, you know, and go global. That's what we've always done. And it's funny because that walks hand in hand with just with sustainability, you know, eat local and things like that, you know, grow it, you know, farm to table. And it's interesting because if you look at cannabis and food, you know, there's a huge future there, whether it be CBD, which is federally legal, you know, people love it, et cetera, with healing benefits, and or THC. It doesn't matter because there's still a future there. It's basically the exact same, like, you know, infusion methods and stuff like that. So it's depending on how you know the outcome to be. That being said, I'm not gonna lie to you, Michigan's well on its way in becoming like the Colorado of the East Coast, you know, and that is, we've suffered a lot of losses, a lot of ups and downs. You know, it's interesting that you say that you know the gentleman you're representing got raided. We know a few people like that. It's happened to over 2 plants, over 3 plants, over the smell of marijuana. Like it's I got a buddy, his apartment in Lansing. He smoked a joint. Now, mind you, he has his medical card. Okay, he can do whatever he fucking wants, basically. All right. He just got back from Iraq. You know what I mean? They kicked his door in, like just tackled him down and had a shotgun to the back of his head all over him smoking a joint. Now, I mean, that was back in 2009, but it just finally got taken care of. You feel me? Like, he got an apology and all. It's like, are you kidding me? Over a joint. What happened if he had a flashback and fought back? He may not be here still. We don't know. But at the same time, that's one of the, the extreme cases, let's be honest, that you hear about locally that you worry about. So that makes you, listen, I got to help fight for this. He went overseas and fought for us. That's the least I can do here on my own turf. And if you can't take care of your own neighborhood or backyard, the fuck are you looking at other people's for?
Well, the thing here is, we see issues with people that are struggling with other issues like autism and stuff like that, especially in police hands, right? A lot of these shootings are sadly people that have a mental issue, right? It's not necessarily a race thing, you know what I mean? So there's a mental issue behind the situation, which then again, like you said, Rodney, like a lot of these mental situations that we're talking about cannabis can have a heavy impact on, right? And you hate to see these situations happen, especially in our day and age. But how do we go about protecting everybody in this industry? You know what I mean? How do we go about protecting our
treating life like fucking Call of Duty? I mean, that's
right.
Pretty much straightforward right there, dude.
Like I said, the interesting thing is we know it's regulated, but it's not. You know what I mean? And it depends on what state you're in is where the regulations fall. Like me and Tim could go all day long about Vermont regulations and the absolute joke that it is in our dispensary system, our medical system, and how it all works, right? A vertically integrated system. Nobody's watching these guys,
and you got
right?
Oklahoma, that's just the fucking Wild West now.
Well, yeah, it's true. So, but how about like the thing with the FDA releasing this stuff to me is just ironic because now they're going to teach you how to keep your trade secrets. They're going to teach you how to brand yourself. They're going to teach you how to market yourself in this market that they're trying to, potentially make impossible to work within, right? If the DA and these guys get their ways. That's my confusion to all this. I mean, Tim, you're a lawyer, and Nick, I'm sure you had to go through this, especially with the branding and marketing stuff. But how do you protect your brand? What do people do out there with companies right now that are just small companies that are making a product that they're just putting out there? How do they protect these products? And can you? Is it even something that you can protect? You know what I mean? Can you? That's my question. And then you read the FDA article. If you guys read it, like it points out a lot of things that are issues, right? That they're going to try to speak on, but like, how can you speak on something when we don't have the regulation structure, right?
Well, we have IP. This all falls under one broad category of law called intellectual property. And IP is an established field of law. It breaks into multiple aspects. So there's trademarking, that's for certain things. There's patenting, that's for certain things. There's trade secrets laws. So that, IP is a broad concept covers a lot of different components. And there are some ways that can be protected. You have some level of protection at the state level. You have others at the federal level. For adult use of medicinal cannabis, that's still a challenge at the federal level because, of course, classification as a Schedule I controlled substance still makes things very difficult. But there are some workarounds when it comes to the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. Patents are actually a lot easier to get. They're not really looking at anything other than, is this a novel process or procedure? Trademarking is a little more challenging if it's directly related to marijuana. Hemp, CBD, basically it depends who your evaluator is. There's a group of lawyers they have at the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office who are assessors, and they've got a dedicated team now, from what I hear, for cannabis related things. But you can also put in, future reserves. So there's definitely strategies. We would generally recommend, again, we're here in Vermont, we're very small scale. We register a lot of trademarks, business names at the state level, which provides protection at the state level. Obviously the use of things like NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, and confidentiality agreements when companies are working together. So there's ways to do it. But again, just like anything else in the cannabis industry, there are also significant challenges that other industries don't have to deal with simply because it's cannabis.
No, it's just an interesting thing because it's one of the biggest hard things we do. And then we talk about packaging. We talk about, how can we package? What can it look like? Is this too much for a kid? Is this too, in some situations, is this too colorful, right? I mean, these are things that we talk about. California has some pretty strict guidelines on their THC and edible markets, and even right down to their size of milligrams that are allowed into each piece and how that's sold as well, right?
Yeah, that's standardized. So does Vermont now. So does Massachusetts. I mean, everybody has, limits. We immediately will fight to increase those limits. They're a little bit ridiculously low right now, 50 milligrams per package here in Vermont. But that's better than zero. That's a start. And then we just keep fighting. And then we petition the board for 75. And then we petition the board for 100. Then we petition the board for 125. And basically, I don't leave their parking lot until we get what we want. And that's how this game is played. We get what we get, and then we fight for more.
Some of the biggest challenges with that, whether it be 50, 75, or 100, is really when it comes down to one of the more difficult things to do in end product formulation is homogeneity, right? So I make 1,000 chocolates. Chocolate 1 and chocolate 1,000 need to be the same, right? And so that's one of the things that so luckily Michigan's in a spot where a single product can have 100 milligrams. So it's fairly potent what you can get, but it cannot be over, and it has to be within 10% of packaging. So that's a key thing that formulators or, people who are making this stuff, you have to be spot on. Like, this is not a rookie's market, and the red tape is there for a reason to protect that. And then the other side of it too is on the packaging is what claims you're making or not making, and how to stay away from saying, if you come out and say, hey, this has CBC in it and CBC kills cancer, like, you're going to have some problems, right? So it's, how can you communicate out the potential outcomes that are being studied and what are coming through without, telling someone that it does something that it doesn't, because again, we're still figuring everything out and finding out what does what. Earlier in the show, you mentioned the entourage effect, and really that's going to be personal to a lot of different people. So, I have my own endocannabinoid system, as do you, as does Robert, as does Tim, right? And so we all need different things to help us potentially balance out and hit kind of that homeostasis for our brain, right? And so those are the different cannabinoid compounds, terpene compounds that help kind of balance that out and give us that like right place, right people type of feel that you get every once in a while.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I'm glad you brought that back up, because I actually was holding on to I want to talk to you about a couple of the compounds that we've seen in the media lately. We have this new compound, it's 30 times stronger than THC, you know what I mean? Yeah. And there's actually 2 compounds that we found, right? And then, I'm interested in this because the third receptor, right? Tell me if I'm wrong, you know what I mean? But we found the third receptor, right? And another cannabinoid that reacts to it significantly. I'm trying to find, I'm having a brain fart right now. THCP, right? Yeah. That's what we're talking about. Can you let us know a little bit about THCP, that from what you understand it to be?
So I understand THCP to be at such a minor level that it could hardly be identified at this point, but it has been. I understand it to be significantly more psychoactive than THC Delta 9. And so we're not at the spot on the regulated cannabis side to be able to really be looking for that. And in all truthfulness, in the Michigan market right now, whatever is made is sold. And so, everyone's doing the amount that goes into R&D versus the amount that goes into product for sales. Right now, the products completely sell themselves. And so it's in the best benefit right now to make as much product, because there's not enough product in the state of Michigan to feed the consumer demand.
That's a big concern, right? Right now, I mean, we see that was our issue in Vermont. Now you're talking about that across the dispensary type mindset, right? Not a rec market.
Correct. So really what it comes down to for the state of Michigan is the way that the licenses rolled out. They all kind of rolled out the same, but when you look at the supply chain, a grow needs months of advanced notice. They need that time to be able to cultivate in order to feed the stores. And when everything comes online at once, and there's, retail outweighs the amount of cultivation that can support it, you start running into supply chain issues where, there's not a lot of recreational vape cartridges out there right now. And it's not because that they're unsafe. It's because there's not the oil. There's not the oil to fill them. And with the oil that is out there, it has to be carefully calculated on how you're going to monetize it and what's the most profitable way to do that. So those are some of the challenges that are going through right now. I think we're seeing more and more cultivation come up online here, and that's going to help support the whole infrastructure. And what's happening is as that supply goes up, prices should continue to drop. They have been dropping in Michigan, and I don't go to my neighbor and ask him for his moonshine, right? I go to the liquor store and I go and get whatever I'm going to be drinking, right? And that's the goal, is to aim towards that regulated market where consumer safety is in the forefront of everyone's mind, right? And making sure this stuff is safe and not just, made in your grandma's basement or, whatever people are doing. So there's a lot of positives to having a well-regulated market that really protects the consumer.
No, and you hit the nail on the head now. Out west, right, we see dispensary prices that are ridiculous, in my opinion, right? Because out east, to buy an ounce is, $200, $300, $400, depending on where you go and what you're buying, right? Where an ounce out west is, $90 to $200, right? I mean, depending. And again, you can pay more. You can obviously pay more for anything, right? But on average, we see these numbers, right? In Michigan and the reason why I bring this up is because I would have to say that's competitive with the rec market, because they have to, because there's a lot of rec market and then there's dispensaries, so you have to stay competitive, right? Is your market competitive? I mean, I know the East Coast market right now, no way. You can save tons of money by going to a really good grower that has literally all the certifications and the pride and care, and pay still top dollar for his cannabis and still be cheaper than some of the dispensaries that we see, right? Does your medical market stand a chance with the recreation market? Can you guys stand side by side, or is it something it's still kind of a cutthroat market to medical?
No, medical is a more competitive market price wise, and part of it is just due to what you're doing. Like, you're providing medicine to patients, and so there's already that give as it is. And those people really need that stuff, right? Recreationals, I'm gonna go get high and watch a movie type of thing, and I do that for fun. There's people that need this stuff to get out of bed. So I would say the medical community in Michigan has done a pretty good job of supporting that. On top of that, there is still a caregiver program here in Michigan. I do believe that will eventually get phased out because there's less regulation there, and less red tape compared to the medical or recreational market. But that's to be seen or announced. But they've been making some different changes over the last 6 months or so that kind of indicate that it's going to be going away. But though the caregivers are what got this whole thing started. They're the ones that were on the front edge, and they were the ones really, really pushing it. And so fortunately, we've seen, a decent amount of them leverage, the income that they were making and the strategy that they were doing as a caregiver and roll into the medical market. There's some that were doing really well and as a caregiver, and that they're going to be considered the way that things used to be done. And if you look at how commerce is happening, like that's going to happen. So it's definitely the med market is great here in Michigan. People are great to the patients, and it's really a lot of patient first mentality, especially with things like pricing.
Yeah. So that's good to hear, because a lot of people, the big question is, how do people either control, like, I don't want to say control, but stay within the black market? Like, how do we take away from the black market and put into our rec markets or into our medical markets? How do we get competitive? How do we you know, do you think it's something that we'll ever get a hold of, or do you think it's going to be one of those ongoing battles forever and ever and ever, and we just have to deal with it?
That's a good question. It's remained to be seen. But in Michigan, you know, individuals are allowed to grow 12 plants. So you can grow a decent amount of your own, and be fine with it. So within that though is gifting. Like I don't think it's illegal for me to go take some tomatoes over to my neighbor's house, right? And if I have some homegrown bud, stuff like that's going to happen. And is that considered black market? Is it considered a gift? I don't know. But Michigan's in a pretty good spot from an agricultural perspective to be able to grow at scale and get to a spot where the prices are comparable, or get to a spot where it just doesn't really make sense. Again, going back to getting moonshine from my neighbor, it's going to be a convenience play. And between that, the availability of things like legal recreational home delivery that's really starting to come up here in Michigan, the convenience is going to be worth the little bit of extra money.
Mm-hmm. No, we agree. I mean, now, when we look at delivery services now and the online stuff that we've seen through COVID and curbside, it's been a blessing in disguise. And I think, not a lot of people really realize this, but the industry every month is breaking sales records, right? They are crushing it. So it's interesting to see where that black market situation is right now, because, technically we're not supposed to leave our, go here, go there. We're supposed to be kind of like on our lockdown in essence in most places. How has that affected your business? I mean, have you guys been open up long enough that you've seen a difference or been affected by it at all?
So on the marijuana side, I work more as a contractor. We have some stuff going in that end, but what we're seeing is the state is really enjoying, especially during this time, the tax revenue, right? And so that's encouraging them to protect that revenue. And so from the conversation that I've been a part of, the state has loved the program. They're able to gain a lot of tax revenue from it, right? In an industry that was previously no tax, right? And now it just comes out of nowhere. So that's been, I think the state has really, really enjoyed the extra income that they've been able to get from it.
Now, which has been great, right? Because now, really quick about Michigan, right? The dispensary system that you guys have there, it's not a vertically integrated system, correct?
That's incorrect. It can be. So if you look at the 5 different verticals inside of cannabis, you have the 2 that have to remain separate just for collusion laws is transport and third-party testing. Makes sense. You don't want to transport someone's stuff for cheaper, or, jump out of the line, and testing for just overall integrity, right? But I would say more so in Michigan than in a place like California. Like if I go out to California, a lot of the provisioning centers or dispensaries, a lot of them are individually owned, almost like a party store or a convenience store type of thing. In Michigan actually is more vertically integrated than most other approved cannabis states, where there's a lot of big business that is coming in, where they have a grow, a processor, and retail all integrated within its own system, supplying to itself. And part of that comes down to being able to look at the business models that work on the original states that went through, like a Washington or a Colorado. And I mean, if you pay attention, you can see the first wave of carnage of everyone that tried to get in. You can kind of study the mistakes that happened, and you can see the people who weathered and what they did differently, and you can replicate that model to an extent.
Mm-hmm. Yep. No, it's really interesting, because I'm glad you pointed out that there's 5 levels, because in Vermont we're vertically integrated, and to me it's a tough integration system, man, because it goes on your patient counts, you know what I mean? So you can only grow what they are offering, like you said, with issues. And if you run into any sort of problems, it really kind of creates a huge issue for your patients, right? Supply chain, when somebody goes into the dispensary and they don't have anything because we had to use it here, like you said, the carts are being more used for flour, I'd imagine, right? Like you said, various other things that are high in demand right now. Again, probably due to COVID more than anything, right? And then like, the carts and all these issues we've seen, everybody seems to kind of like go back to that one thing is flower, right? Even people I've seen are like super into dabs, going out, dab bars, everybody's dabbing doing, right? And nobody's even touching it right now. In my market, it's kind of weird. Everybody wants flower because it's like everybody's like just want to go home and sit down and smoke a joint, for Christ's sakes, right? I know that's why I do that. It's just not quite the same thing to me, but anyways, guys, we're getting close into the show. I want to give a big shout out to Thomas Markholm, who's not with us today, who's usually here, our Growers Guide segment. Unfortunately, he is super under the weather. I was going to play an old segment that he had for you guys, but with the time being and the conversations we had, we'll keep it for a fresh one for you guys. But I just want to make sure we give him a shout out. We love you. We miss you, buddy. Hopefully you get well. I know he's been, having a rough day today. So, but I don't want to forget about Rodney, man. We got Rodney coming up. It's been an awesome show. Rodney, we talked about a lot about terps and cannabinoids today, man. This has been a great show. It's like one of my favorite things to talk about, right? And here comes Rodney. So I know you have a great strain this week. Give us a little intro to what we got this week.
So this week, I'm pretty sure it was Blueberry Headband. Pretty sure they all get kind of fuzzy. I'm joking. No, it's Blueberry Headband.
It's not good.
This one I really liked. I really did like. It's interesting because you hear all these people, especially growers here in Michigan, that are like, yo, blueberry muffin, blueberry this, blueberry, that, and it's okay, cool, blueberries. And then when you smoke it, you're like, I didn't think blueberries. Or when like you smell it, you're like, I don't think blueberries. This one, most definitely thinking blueberries. It was, very true to its name. It had that headband feeling, and I don't know, man, I really enjoyed it. I tried to do something a little different this week. Let's see if you guys like it. If you like it, I'll keep the intro. I absolutely hate the music. I realized after finishing it that it was the wrong song, but it's cool. I'm just going to roll with it, smoke a joint, forget it ever happened, right? Moving on. But no, yeah, without further ado, you want to slap that one up?
Yeah. Here we go. We're going to do a little bit of the Blueberry Headband, guys.
I'm Chef Rodney, and I travel the world looking for more information on cannabis. So follow me as we learn about the world's knowledge of scientific terpenes, strains, and methods coming from this amazing plant. This is Deliciously Dope Strain. What up, Canna fam? It's your boy Chef Rodney with Deliciously Dope here, bringing you Deliciously Dope Strain of the week. This week, smelling like berries, pepper, and diesel, we're bringing you Blueberry Headband. Now, off the rip, this strain is nothing short of a good time. Sitting right around 17.5% THC, Blueberry Headband is a good go-to if you aren't looking to manage some pain or deal with some headaches. Now, the terpenes found in this strain are myrcene, B-caryophyllene, limonene. Now, I want to point out that those are what I recognize based off of my own personal evaluation of what I was looking for scent-wise and taste-wise. Finding a terp list with this one was rather incomplete. It just wasn't there. It's not existing. One person would say one thing and the other person would say anything. So I was like, yeah, screw it. You didn't actually write anything down, so I'm gonna. Moving on. This is commonly used for migraines. Now, Blueberry Headband high comes on very strong and quick, but right before the headband, that's right before the headband feeling actually happens. But not to worry is it's immediately accompanied by like an uptick in mental energy, leaving the user feeling like a really, really relaxed in their body. So we got the body relaxation to kind of ballot it out. Now, the list of medicinal properties for this, it's insane. As I was reading it, I felt like the list was growing longer. It literally helps everything. Having, myrcene in it, myrcene being a very common, terpene that's found in cannabis, it's no wonder why. Now, I couldn't find a flowering time on this one, so it looks like I'm gonna have to reach out to my guys at Sticky Mix Cannabis here in Michigan and give me some more information. Sorry that was incomplete, but hey, let's face it, I smoke a lot of weed, right? Okay. I won't tell if you won't tell. Now, some similar strains on this are Lemon Haze, Purple Diesel, and Tangerine Dream. Now, the strain absolutely reminded me of smoking, cannabis back in high school. It was insane. Some parent strains to this are 76 Blueberry, Emerald, OG Kush, which, given, the parent strains, it's a good 50-50 hybrid. So, totally makes sense to me there. If you want
to kind of being thrown back and reminisce like how it was to smoke weed in high school and the headband effect and things of that nature, or just kick it on a Saturday afternoon and just chill. Go buy this one. Definitely check it out. It's worth it. Now, I can't tell you that I can't tell you enough about this. Honestly, it's just one of those strains. It's just all around good. Now, my apologies in previous episodes. We didn't get to show you what it looks like. Now, if we can move this in real quick, I can show you that these are very kind of dense looking, very airy. Yeah, I mean, these are beautiful looking nugs. Anytime you get anything like this, you kind of don't want to get rid of it, honestly. But you're gonna have to forgive me for kind of going back in there. But today, we're not gonna actually smoke. I got this really awesome custom hand-blown bowl by my buddy Jay. I got this a while back. It's my go-to. It's my favorite. But without further ado, y'all. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Should have put a screen in my bowl, but and that's good. Definitely can taste the myrcene. Definitely can taste that with a hint of citrus in the end. It's kind of reminiscent of lemon. So yeah, absolutely. Now, it's kind of choking me up a little bit, but that's just because it's me. Usually, probably a turd pop or something of that nature. But without further ado, I'm going to finish this bowl. I'm Chef Rodney Lionheart, Deliciously Dope. This has been Deliciously Dope Strand of the Week. I appreciate y'all. Peace.
Oh man, we're gonna talk about high school, right? Let's have this conversation before we finish this, right? Brings you back to high school. Let's talk about this, right? Anybody who knows headband, right? Like headband was pretty prevalent back then, right? It's something that hasn't. It's really hard to find really good headband or the right headband. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of different variations of headband, but like it's kind of gone away. And in essence, like you don't see it everywhere. You know what I mean? It's a very hard string.
That's why my boys at Sticky Mitts was like, yo, I got some blueberry headband. Yes, I said headband. And I'm like, how much do you have? How much do you have? And they're like, well, I mean, they gave me some for the show. And then I was like, let me buy some more. They're like, absolutely. So I may or may not picked up a couple ounces from them. And the best part is, and we're talking about dispensaries versus, private growers, if you will. Mm-hmm. They're growing obviously for commercial, but I purchased it from them. I get a really good deal doing it that way, and I feel a better product. It's like going to a farmer's market versus a grocery store. You feel me? That's how you have to look at it. And honestly, I'm going to support both the same. I really will, because it's, some stores have better tomatoes, and it's all about preference or what you're trying to do with said products. With this blueberry headband, dude, I bought 2 ounces off of them in addition to what they gave me, and it's already gone. I was just like, yo, I think about maybe possibly having a headache tomorrow. Might as well smoke now. You know what I mean? Like, I'd take care of it, but this is the last of it. I figured I'd celebrate and fucking, like you were saying, man, it makes you feel like you're back in high school with that
headband. Like when it's a very properly named strain, right? I mean, literally when you smoke it, like you said, when you smoked it on the thing, you're like, you can see it. You could literally see it in your face. That's what headband does.
That's why I didn't edit that out. That's why I didn't edit that out, because I was just like, yo, I could cut this because I'm getting better as we go, and I'm learning more and more about it. And it's fun. It really is. And especially, I mean, I smoke weed and edit videos. That's pretty badass, And so I was like, you know what? No, they'll know what I mean by this. Like, I'm keeping that in, and I'm glad that you noticed that. That means that my artistic endeavors are actually working, or the weed's really, really strong. I don't know. Either way, I'm good with it.
Well, I mean, there are certain strains out there that will hit you in certain ways that you'll know that it's the right strain. You know what I mean? Like a Bruce Banner, a headband. And there's different variations of them, like a chem dog. You know what I mean? Like you just when you open that package, you know right away what the fuck's in the bag, right?
Yes.
Or
I mean,
whatever.
Speaking
right?
of which, like, okay, listen, I love my boys at Sticky Mitts. I love everything I've done so far, Strain of the Week. I love being on the show. But I just hit up the Hempire Collective up in Clare, Michigan. They literally just had their grand opening last Saturday. Okay. Mm-hmm. They gave me something to try for this week, for next week's episode. It's called Gorilla Grease. The game is changing. I'm telling you, like, I really don't like dispensary weed. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's just it's not as good as what I can get being in the market myself.
Yeah.
That being said, I tried this because let's face it, I did it with a lot of other dispensary weeds and stuff like that. So I was like, I'm still gonna try it.
Mhm.
This is setting the stage. This is a whole new ball game. It's gonna be one you guys are gonna want to definitely listen in on because it's huge. It's
Greasy
Gorilla
weed.
Grease. It's oh man.
We've
Oh
had some
man.
really interesting grease type strains out here, and like as nasty as they smell, and as ugly as they look, and as
Fire.
sticky and black and
Fire.
disgusting as it really kind of is. Like we had a strain called Pork Chop that kind of hit our market. We called it Pork Chop, right? But like literally, it smelled like fryer later grease, man. Like you open the bag, but the smoke.
Yep.
And as a chef, for me, like a lot of people laugh at me when I describe how stuff smokes because I'm very like,
Right.
oh, it hits the back of your mouth, the
Yep.
texture, like it's almost like wine to me, right? But like that stuff, the minute you light it, oh my god, it's like it's nothing better than a juicy pork chop. It's so fucking good, right?
Was it
And it's hard to
smooth?
explain. Uh, oh man, yeah,
Yeah.
dude, just amazing. And then uh, we've had some incredible strains that I'm trying. Maui pot roast, which
Okay.
literally you can taste the potatoes and the onions in it, and it's just like it's
Yeah.
like these unique, interesting strains. And like, so you bring up a point, and I know we're talking to Nick, and he has his stores, and we're talking about the dispensaries, and you were saying about the black market, right?
Yep.
One thing I think that you kind of like almost hinted on there is that like your options, right? The options in the black market far succeed a store, right? Unlike any other stores where like you got to go to the grocery store to find the options, right? That's I think one of our bigger problems because like the chances of a dispensary running that particular strain is probably slim to none because they're not playing with strains for THC or content. They're trying to play with strains that are more derivative to what the patient needs in a care format, which typically is not all these crazy crosses and things of that nature, unless it again, blueberry strain. Yeah, that's a great medical
Right.
strain.
I mean, but
Um,
you can't get it twisted though. At the same time, stuff that the stuff that Nick's doing, you're paying for that. The testing, you're paying for the quality. He's taking he's creating a process that he knows, that's tried and true, and giving that to the public. I'm all about that. Honestly, I can, widely attest to what he's doing and the things that he's doing. He's making great moves, man. He's pioneering it for us for sure. Huge
Well,
footsteps to follow in.
I think too, one of the things that we're really getting underway with in the market as it matures is just understanding what grows well in our climate, right? You go out to somewhere like Colorado or Oregon, there's a lot of cannabis out there, but their climate is super dry, where they can dry the plants in the field. But here in Michigan, I don't know about Vermont, but here in Michigan, it gets very muggy, very humid, right? A lot more prone, a lot more chances for things to go bad. So a lot of these places are just trying to figure out what grows well here and then start dialing in like your stuff sounds like a restaurant that Rodney would cook at. Our stuff is all more fruity flavors, a lot of strawberry glue, strawberry cough. You still get your Gorilla Glue #4. You still get a lot of the classics, but really it's figuring out what grows well here, and then let's do a lot of that, and then what doesn't grow well here, and let's get rid of it. So a lot of it's just rotating in different genetics to see what Michigan or what our local market does well.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
People
And to
don't
kind of
realize.
roll back with the whole potato and onions things, that's what I'm doing. It's deliciously dope, man. I'm taking these flavors that taste like blueberries or taste like muffins or taste like pot roast and prime rib and all these, and we're putting them in those foods. And then you're creating an experience where not only is the food now we're gonna put an interactive flair on it, but we're showing people Krystillion's Delta 8 products or Krystillion's CBD products in these foods, what they can do, the medicinal purposes behind it, and we're creating an experience that as chefs we've always fucking fought people for. It's like, all right, cool, I know you liked that, but what did you like about it? Well, it was good. No, if you're a little bit like relaxed with CBD, you're gonna be like, dude, it was good because of this.
Yep.
And then I feel this. I can tell you, unequivocally, I feel calmer or I feel better about my life. Like that's a very good meal because it made me feel something. And that, as an artist, that's what you want. It's what art's about, man. It's feeling something.
The bounce.
Look at Van Gogh, you feel it. You know what I'm saying? So now we can feel something from food, and that fucking mind blowing.
Well, I love sushi, man. Every time I eat it, you just feel, you know what I mean, the minerals and the values that like fish and the raw value of a lot of whatever you get in that side of that sushi, right?
Oh yeah.
You actually feel it, like you feel fucking great.
Yeah, you're like, dude, I don't feel fat. I don't feel like I just ate a fucking, full pound burger. Don't get me wrong, burgers are fucking delicious. And
Oh, we need a burger every once in a
while.
while.
Anybody for a burger and a blunt, but the point is, there's a difference in feeling for sure, and that's healing, man. I'm gonna count that as healing. Like that's,
no, it definitely is.
What I'm about,
Yeah, no, it definitely is. Anyways, guys, we're at that time limit. We'll wrap this thing up. I appreciate everybody coming on. I know we all have things to get going.
Good to see you, Nick. Good to see you, Chef Rodney, as always. Nick, really nice to meet you, man.
Hey, you as well, Tim. Thank you.
Thank you for everything again, Tim. God bless Vermont. Let's get this going, guys. It was a very crazy week in news this week, except for a lot more just little companies buying up stuff and propaganda and stuff like that. But which is good to see. You know what I mean? Nothing major, nothing. There's a lot of little things still happening, guys. People are still getting arrested. People are still getting kicked in with guns drawn. So be careful, be cautious, and be aware. You know what I mean? Know your local laws. Like we said, we have a lot of people on this show from all over different states, different countries that talk about their local permittable laws. Just don't ever get confused. You know what I mean? And that's why we talk to people, because we want to see what's out there. We want to know how other states are working versus our states, and not even our states or whoever's listening to the show. So just again, we preach this all the time. Know your local laws, know your federal laws. Try to stay within the limits. And vote, guys, vote.
Oh, yeah.
That's it. We gotta vote, right?
Vote.
Hey, Nick, what was the website where people can check out your products?
I was gonna say, Nick, how can people find you?
Good question. So I'm not as good on the PR side as I probably should. I don't have an Instagram. I probably should get one.
Yeah, I'm gonna have a conversation with you about that after the show.
Okay. Yeah, teach me how to create an account. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah,
right. People in the Midwest, they usually find me at various, when we were doing hemp events and hemp shows, things like that, I would do some speaking there. But really, you can kind of track me down through our website. So it's krystillion.com, KRYSTILION.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Facebook. So those are kind of the avenues. Still got to work on getting out there a little bit better, though.
I mean, it sounds like you have a great product. The Delta 8 thing is really phenomenal to see for us. You know what I mean? Because I know, like I said, it's been a big conversation. Everybody's looking for it. Everybody's trying to get their hands on it. Everybody's interested in it. And then with all the news and talk about it, it's now it's like it seems like it's more of the hot topic than CBD, which is I always laugh at the CBD market because again, with the amount of other cannabinoids that have other values to it, it just blows my mind. But on a federal legality level, I understand the usage of it and creating these markets, hopefully based around it, that we can expand to other cannabinoids, right? And then hopefully this Delta 8 thing can be handled properly enough that market can stay open, because I mean, like you said, it's another great product. It's another great avenue for cannabis, right?
We're coming, baby. We're coming, man. And with that said, like, shit, we're coming. You know what I'm saying? Like, dude, it's I gotta say this before we get out of here. I know it's busy, but I'm about to be one of the first chefs in the fucking nation to cook with Delta 8. That's all I'm saying. Like, that to me, that's a goal. That's paramount to me, man. That's huge.
Which is gonna be fun, man. It's gonna be interesting, and I love it. Again, Nick, I'd love to pick your brain some more, even off Zoom or off a show, because these are things I'm trying to learn and understand more and more and more. And like you said, the information is kind of vague. You know what I mean? Everybody has a different opinion, and like you said, there's a few different ways to achieve the end result, and through different processes and integrities and things of that nature. And what's unique about it, again, it is what everybody's looking at right now. So guys, if you're tuned in and you're listening, you have any interest in Delta 8, Krystillion is doing it. They have it. They have the carts. Go online, you can order them, right? Is that something that you can ship out of Michigan for people?
Yeah, so we can ship to 40 states right now. There's 10 states that have kind of ill-defined laws, or they have defined that outside of hemp and marijuana, they have started limiting isomers. And there's a lot of the more, I would say, a lot of the conservative states, but you'll kind of see some out there that already have marijuana laws, like Colorado, for example. I can't ship to Colorado because Delta 8 is regulated the same as Delta 9. They sell it in dispensaries. Colorado dispensary is not going to legally be able to purchase product from Michigan and ship it. So we do have a blog under our resources tab that shows where we can and can't ship to. And if people try to put in orders, we catch them and we cancel them. So again, we have to be above board and we have to innovate, but we have to innovate responsibly. So, but yes, we can ship it. All of our orders have free shipping. So, and we usually get stuff out within a couple of days. So we're usually pretty quick.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate your integrity because it's hard to find in this industry right now.
It goes back to our why, right? Crystal clear, right? If you can't tell, I'm a pretty open book. I'm happy to share, the beatings and the black eyes and the fat lips that I've gotten along the way. So yeah, happy to help offline, whatever you guys need. But yeah, providing crystal clear, understandable things is what we do.
Well, that's the way you learn, man. You can't learn by winning all the time, right? That's why I always say, hey, you have to take a couple of hits and get back up and go, because otherwise it's it's just pure luck at that point, right?
Yeah, well, and none of us are smarter than all of us. And I think as something that's as new as this, we have to really take that into consideration with how fast we want to go to get to where we want to be.
Well, I appreciate you making that statement because like I brought up earlier, I think we see a lot of diversity right now with people being just dicks about stuff. You know what I mean? Let's be more open-minded, guys. You know what I mean? And like you said, and another great thing you said earlier that I just want to cap off the show with was, when we talk about cannabis and medicating people, right? We were constantly trying to remind people that people have different cannabinoid systems. It affects people differently. But I want to throw in there, it's really no different than any of these pharmaceutical drugs. And the reason I want to say that is because if you ever taken a pharmaceutical drugs, typically you're taking one or two for your issue or ailment, and then you're taking a couple extras for the side effects of said medications, right? So you end up on a pill binge, and then I bet you the numbers are staggering about how many times they're overdosing somebody. They gave them the wrong medication. These people didn't respond well to a medication. So it's really no different than any other medical field. You really need to be cautious and aware. You need to find what works for you. And that's why the strain specific stuff, knowing your strains, that's why we brought up terps earlier with the strain specificness is, if you're a patient and you're looking for stuff, different processes might not be exactly what you need. Flowers and things like that, natural based processes, like you said, the fresh press. That's why I like the fresh press so much, because you really can't mess it up. It literally is that plant. It's that cannabinoid profile. It's that terp profile, right? So that entourage effect is going to be in that what that plant is supposed to do for you. Perfect. Where a cart, like we said, it's a blended oil. It's a terp based additive. It's not quite exactly what we're talking about there. Not to say that there's anything wrong. Like I say there's a medical market for a reason, and there's a rec market. I'm a stoner too, like you guys, right? I want to go get fucked up. I want to go, but that there's a market for that. But what I try to remind people is what I'm getting fucked up on is not the same thing that would probably be great for a patient, right? So patients need to understand what we're talking about today. Cannabinoids, how they work with your body, and the terp values that you're looking for that will help you with your hunger, with your pains, with your PTSDs, you know what I mean? Everything from mental to physical, which is wonderful about the plant. And the more you learn about receptors and these compounds, the more you're going to learn that what you ingest in other areas of your life really are having immense effects on, again, these said issues. We talk to Dr. Bob a lot, and he's bounces up the wall. He's almost 80 years old, and he's like on this cannabis space, everything. And it's amazing to see how these people age in such energy and health and mental awareness, because a lot of these things we call it like releasing the mind and mentality stuff. A lot of it's food based, a lot of it's these processed stuff, a lot of it with autisms and gluten intolerances, as Chef will know, a lot of it's derived from processed foods, a lot of it's derived from even some can say vaccinations and metals. You know what I mean? It's that metal count that really kind of fucks with your brains. Dr. Uma will get back on, and she can discuss a little bit of how metals affect bodies. You know what I mean? And what we're seeing in just really cheap products, whether it's cannabis or food or drinks or sodas, things of that nature, and the effect they have on the body. Where we have a soda industry that we can't bring into our children's schools, but to thrive in industry, but we can't bring cannabis in anywhere, right? It's just some of these things are just very oxymoronish to me. But again, guys, I appreciate the show. I think we're going to end it, and I'm going to actually play last week's episode of Grower's Guide because it's it really still holds value. A lot of people are talking about a lot of people are talking about when they need to take down their plants. How to tell is the biggest thing.
Exactly.
What's a trichome? How do you tell my plant's ready? I potted it at this point, but I don't know how long the growth cycle is. Right. A lot of these plants can range anywhere from 55 to 75 plus days in the growth cycle. That's 20 days of difference, right?
Exactly.
20 days on 20 days over on a plant, you just in hemp, you just you just heat that bitch up, and then 20 days over, you just really sativa'd it out in essence. I don't want to say sativa'd it, but you just really took the effect of it. It's going to be much harder hitting effect.
I'm fucking stoned. I know they'll love that clip. I'm gonna get out of here and go cook some fucking dinner. It might be Fruity Pebbles. I don't know. But it was a pleasure,
I appreciate it, guys. Nick, thank you again,
Joe,
man. And we appreciate what you're doing. I love what you're doing. Everything is very unique. We'll touch base very soon.
Oh, absolutely.
On a bunch of different levels, because I think I'm gonna pick your brain, man. Like, we're gonna become good friends. So I like what you're doing. I really appreciate what Michigan's doing, man. Like, shout out to Michigan. Dude, you guys are like all my new best friends are out of Michigan right now. I can't say enough. My best friend just moved to Michigan, so I gotta give a huge shout out to what you guys are doing, because I've been following you guys. I love what I'm hearing. I've been talking to all sorts of different grow deals and people opening up for retails, and it's just great to see, man. And hopefully we'll get there soon here in Vermont.
Absolutely,
but
man.
Again, guys, thank you for coming on, Nick. Yeah, thank you again. You guys find him, like we said, all over the internet, Krystillion, and that's it. We're gonna go to Thomas Marcombe, Grower's Guide, guys, and this is all about your trichomes. When do you know how to pull your plants? Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be back next week.
Cloudy trichomes are going to be your mature trichomes. Normally, under most circumstances, Vermont Grow Coaching likes to harvest with about 75 to 80% cloudy trichomes and about 10 to 15% amber. There may be a few clear ones still thrown in there, but when it comes down to it, as long as you're seeing a fair share of cloudy and or amber trichomes, your plants are ready to go. So let's take a look. So you can see by the first photo, those trichomes were mostly clear. That plant is still immature and is not ready to be harvested. The second photo shows more cloudy trichomes. Again, still some clear in there, so you could harvest it. It would produce a decent product. However, not quite as mature as we'd like to see at harvest. The third photo that you just saw, that's the ticket. If your trichomes look like that, your plant is ready for harvest today. You can go ahead and harvest her, start her drying, and get the curing process going so that you can be enjoying your smoke in as little as 3 weeks. In the event you have a freeze dryer in hand, make sure to give us a call and we'll happily teach you how to dry and cure your product in only 24 hours. Thanks for tuning into Grower's Guide. Hopefully now you have a general understanding of when and how to harvest your plants. If you have any questions or concerns regarding today's segment or would like to set up a consultation appointment, please reach out to us at vermontgrowcoach.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram or contact us directly at 802-342-5381.
All right, guys, and that's it for the show. We are going to kick it off, and that's it. We'll talk to you next week. Thank you guys for joining. Talk to you soon.